Hello and welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break. I'm Alistair McKenzie, and we've got, I think, an interesting show actually this week. I think it'll be quite good fun. As you can see, I've got a panel full of guests down there, not as many as we thought we were going to get. And Roni, who is probably at your left-hand end, because he's at my right-hand end, and it's always the wrong way around. But Roni Weiss, who's basically the founder of the New York Travel Festival, which we're going to talk about in a moment, was just saying there's no women on this panel, and he's totally right. There aren't, but that's not for the want of asking. We did ask a couple, and they haven't been able to make it. If you're watching and you want to participate, then there is the Q&A app. If you look on the screen, top right, there's a button, Q&A, you press that, and it allows you to write questions in there, or even, as Dylan Lowe has done, send greetings. He says greetings from the bleachers. So good to see you there, Dylan. Let's get going. We're talking about the New York Travel Festival. Both Roni Weiss and Ethan Gelber are involved in organising it. Ronnie's the lead guy, and it's starting in a fortnight. Roni, tell us what it's about, and a little bit of history, because it hasn't been going that long, has it?
So this is our third year. Basically, having been to a lot of kind of standard consumer shows, what I realized is that a lot of the attendees were baby boomers and families, and it didn't necessarily target the interests of younger professionals. And the media who attend a lot of these events go because it's an appointment thing. They end up talking on the sidelines, and they're not necessarily that engaged, or they're going to meet up with the people who they already know to say, hey, I haven't talked to you since last year here. So the fundamental idea was, how do you make an event that's different for all the different parties who kind of are doing this by rote? And then on the other end, for the sponsors / tables / exhibitors themselves, a lot of times, despite the fact that they're getting big numbers to these events, they're not getting really good interaction. I've seen a lot of times when people come up to them, and everybody knows the whole taking pens, taking brochures thing, but just the fundamental lack of respect really shocked me. I work with Africa Travel Association, so I helped out with a Zambia booth at one of these events, and somebody came up and said, yeah, I think my niece was in Peace Corps in Zambia. And the woman I was with said, oh, that's fantastic. He goes, yeah, I think she said it was the armpit of Africa. And that wasn't an isolated incident of just these people who are coming, and this strange sort of narcissism of these people who are going up to the booth simply to tell people about their tales of travel, as opposed to truly caring about going to any of these locations. So anyway, for us in New York, we have this very broad and interconnected, although not always connected, group of travel networkers. So one of the things that we've done over the past 2 years is work with different networking groups like Young Travel Professionals, Travel Massive, Travel Plus Social Good, Travel 2.0, which focuses on startups and travel tech, to bring them all together. Because while you can find people who go to 2 or 3, it's rare that you'll find people who cross-pollinate completely. So in some ways, we're an umbrella event for the different people within travel. The other thing that we found in terms of the people who attend our event is that we get a lot of people who want to join the travel industry, whether in terms of a career in sales or marketing, or becoming a content creator like a blogger or writer or photographer, videographer, those sorts of things. A lot of the people who come are just curious to know how to do it, and it's a really great community for them to learn that. So to that end, we've introduced new elements this year that are for these different groups that we find that we're getting. So for the people who are in career transition, we have a thing called Pathfinder Consults, which we're doing with young travel professionals. So we're going to have different professionals from the travel industry who are there basically to give career advice. So they all have whatever career paths they've taken in travel, and they come from a lot of different brands: Royal Caribbean, Mandarin Oriental, El Al. We've got a lot of really great people who are part of that, and folks who are looking for, because what I find is a lot of people say, I want to be part of the travel industry, and they have no idea what that means. even though they have a profession that they're currently in, they don't necessarily know how that translates. So Pathfinder Consults is a way to do that.
In terms of numbers, what kind of balance is it? So you've got consumers, you've got fringe people, as you say, who are interested maybe in the travel industry as some sort of a career. You've got travelers who are involved in media, in other words, bloggers and the like. What kind of percentages are all those different?
So what's funny is, I mean, as any sponsor wants to know who's coming in, is it industry, is it a consumer event? And one of the things that I've found, I mean, I'm 31, I'm sturdily a millennial. And the thing is, we end up wearing a lot
chicken.
we end up wearing a lot of hats. So defining somebody ends up being sort of difficult in terms of what they fit in. That being said, we do say that we, at least for Saturday specifically, it's industry, media, and consumer. And these are much broader than a lot of people in terms of categories. For industry, it's anybody who makes their money through travel or is looking to do so sometimes, because people do buy our industry tickets who are looking to transition and want to get a better kind of foundation. Our media are not just standard traditional sort of old media outlets, but our media are anybody from people who are Instagrammers through editors of major publications. So to us, we really try to cast as broad of a net as possible because we want it to be a welcoming place for a certain type of mentality. We use lines like people who see travel as a means of experience, not just escape, people who want to know about the things that they don't know that they don't know. I mean, once you start kind of wrapping your mind around the different sorts of events and topics we come up with, you get a sense of the kinds of people we're trying to get. We have a panel on ethics in travel, which a lot of people don't want to even touch. So we want to have the discussions that people are looking to have and are having in hangouts like these, but don't necessarily get to have in a more standard sort of event.
Well, you bring me to a sort of preview of what we're doing today, which is that we were going to talk about the festival itself, but also, as you say, part of the idea behind the festival is that it looks at issues in that intersect between social media and travel, and so to that end, we thought we'd talk about some of the issues that you're likely to be talking about during the course of the festival itself. But Ethan, you're involved in the organisation as well. I'm right in thinking you've got a number of quite distinguishable tracks, haven't you? So people can go in and go down the career track or the social media track, or what's involved there?
Yeah, Ronnie's already laid out several of the elements in terms of the split between days, or maybe he didn't lay it out quite specifically in that way. The way we've talked about things in the past was the event is spread across a weekend, the Saturday and the Sunday, in 2 different locations. And the Saturday we like to think of as the day for people who know what hats they're wearing in the space. The Sunday, however, is for people who are looking to figure out which hat they want to wear. Of 2 major tracks, if you will. Another way within the day, primarily on Saturday, is to, well, there are a lot of ways to parse this. One way is the way that we've got it presented on the website, and that is if you are a member of the media, there is a lot of media information. If you are a member of the industry in general, there are a lot of industry panels, presentations, and speakers that will be available that are industry specific. And in fact, there's a ticket that you can buy which privileges you as an industry member attending or being part of those presentations and panels. And then if you're a consumer, there's more general stuff that's available for you. A lot of the consumer stuff is also on Sunday because that's for the people, again, who are trying to figure out what kind of hats they wear. Then also,
so there's tiered access. You can get, depending on your ticket, you can get into some things, but not other things.
Yeah, that's specific, especially the case for industry and for media, who, and I call it privileged access, but it's really just a priority access. If you are a member of the industry and you are interested in taking part of some sessions that are really geared for people in the industry to go deeper into very specific subjects. These are primarily workshops, but also some panel discussions and presentations. The workshops, though, which plunge deeper, which spend less time on presentation and more time on discussion, you really have to have been in the space in order to be able to dive as deep as the people would like to take you. And so it is it's intended primarily for industry, and yes, there is tiered pricing for industry to give them that level of priority access to these kinds of resources. There's also within the festival in general, every year we've had different points of focus. The idea with the festival, in part, as Roni laid out already, is the importance of not being the same thing year after year. New speakers, new ideas, new hot button topics, new everything. If we can renew the festival so that it is something different every time, then we will have succeeded. That is a massive challenge, and of course that sense of 100% renewal will never be the case. But what we've done this year in of particular interest is weave in something called the Travel and Unity Summit, which focuses on the questions and issues of diversity in the travel space, cultural diversity within the travel space. That is, if you will, a track for people who are coming in and interested in looking at how subpopulations have been dealt with within the travel space. There's a particular emphasis we're placing on African Americans and on
travelers with disabilities.
Travelers with disabilities. Thank you, Roni. This year, that's part of it, but there's also a through thread from previous years, a look at LGBT travelers and how, quite frankly, they have been the success of this non-mainstream travel space, how what they've done is a model that can be used by other subpopulations in terms of achieving critical mass as a travel force, as a travel population, but also so that marketers and destinations can actually create resources specifically for them.
I know for you, you in particular, Ethan, one of your big passions and areas of expertise is responsible travel. I'm assuming that you've managed to edge that into the program somewhere as well.
Yeah, there have been token panels in the past couple of years. This year, prompted by one of our keynote presenters, there's an emphasis on ethics in travel. Ethics, which covers a lot of ground. It isn't specifically about responsibility or sustainability.
That's a county north of London.
Sorry?
Yeah, with the list. Yeah,
it's
an Essex joke.
UK joke.
Sorry, here I am with my American tin ear. Yeah, so ethics is a big part of it. We've got an important
now I can't hear it right.
kind of panel, which looks at some of the broader issues of responsibility and sustainability in travel, but also the political decisions that people need to take into account when traveling to destinations that might not be most favored. And then later in the day, in part because of the work that Matthew Barker and I have done throughout Founding on the ethics of journalism in media and travel, the questions of sponsored content and all of that nutty stuff. We have another session, a workshopy session that looks very specifically at whether or not travel journalists and bloggers can make an honest living these days. There's another panel on influence, which will be an outgrowth in part of what is taking place here today, or at least this discussion today will inform that discussion in 10 days' time or so. So yes, it's certainly woven in, not as a primary track, but I think of it, and I have been describing it as brackets. The ethics are important brackets for this year's festival, especially since we're beginning with it and we'll be closing with it to some degree as well.
Roni, one of the things, when you're an organizer of an event like this, there come moments when you think, oh, thank God I've got them. You know, there's that moment when you think, I've got a speaker I really, really wanted to get, or maybe you failed sometimes. But for you, what are going to be the highlights? I mean, the ones you're really pleased with putting together.
I mean, I'm always happy about how we manage to bring in different media folks in terms of editors of major publications. So this year, for the ethics panel, we have the travel editor of the Wall Street Journal moderating that panel. And for our trends panel, we have the travel editor of Mashable. So I'm excited about both those. The thing is, I'm excited about a lot, if not most, if not all of the people who come in, because they all have their kind of and I'm not trying to be political. Like, I sent an email yesterday to all the speakers saying, I know you're busy people and you could be anywhere else in the world, quite literally doing anything else. So the fact that you have taken it upon yourself to block out this time to be here, to talk to people, truly means a lot to me. One element of the festival that I do want to bring up that we haven't touched on yet is Travel 2.0 and NYTF, which is the startup and tech portion. One of the things also in terms of the bigger events is that there's no entry point for new companies. Except for buying a ticket and kind of just walking around and giving their business card. So we have a specific component that's dedicated to startup companies being able to demonstrate what they're doing. And as a part of it, we focus on what's new in the tech space within travel. So this year, we're going to be doing virtual reality and augmented reality, not just discussing it, but we have a few companies doing demos. So I honestly have no idea what to expect when it comes to that, because I've seen augmented reality. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you got Michael Hodson there?
We talked to him. I know. Yeah, Ethan, I think, has talked to him more recently.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael's basically decided that virtual reality is going to be one of the sort of key trends for the future. Certainly, in the next, when we get to the Christmas season this year, it'll be the gamer present of choice, and probably in a year after that, it'll be in sort of most families' Christmas under the Christmas tree at most families' places, and so he's getting himself prepped for it, and is making these amazing 3D videos for virtual reality in locations around the world. So he's getting in ahead of the game. So I think it's very wise to have exactly that that subject being tackled at the New York Travel Festival.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm excited.
I think Michael is planning on being there, but I'm not sure. He's not involved in a more intimate fashion, I don't believe.
Oh, okay. Okay. We should just mention, because I know he'll be watching, that Dylan Lowe's going to be talking about, presumably about his new project, the Ripple movement. Are there any others that we should highlight here that many people will know?
I mean, we work with Professional Travel Bloggers Association. Brett Love, I think, is somebody people probably know within this space. So he's going to be putting together the panel for them, and that's going to be focusing on how to work with influencers and brand ambassadors. So that's another workshop. The schedule is a great place to find those sorts of things, and hopefully people. We also have a Twitter chat coming up at 12, where you'll be able to talk to different media partners and networking partners, which Dylan is co-hosting. So
that's 12 EST, I take it. So
sorry, yes, less than 3 hours from now. 5 o'clock or something,
UK time, and 6 in Europe. For those who do want to find more information, then the website is New York Travel Fest? I can't remember what the
NY Trav Fest, NYTRAVFEST. That's us on Twitter, that's us on Facebook, and if you just look up New York Travel Festival or NY Trav Fest, you'll find us.
Okay. And indeed, Dylan is watching us because he's just said hi. I should say to viewers that, again, remind you that if you press that Q&A button at the top right-hand side of the screen, then you can make your input into the program. You can ask questions or just make comments, and we'll pick them up here. Okay, let's move on then to the other half of this, because we were talking, as you say, about there being a series of events that will be based around the current trends and issues in that intersect between social media influencers and the travel industry. And to that end, I've got 3 more guests who've been very patiently sitting there not saying a word. I've got Matthew Barker, Matthew, I'm not clear, are you actually going to be at the festival itself?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. You got mentioned in dispatches a moment ago, so I thought that maybe you were. We've also got Melvin Böcher, who's well known to everybody from Travel Dudes, and we've got Michael Turtle, who's a well-known travel blogger, Time Travel Turtle. And Michael is, I'm absolutely thrilled to have him on the show this week, because I know that he only flew back in from somewhere far distant and global last night and is flying out again probably about 24 hours later, so he's probably zonked, but it's great to have you here, Michael. Matthew, one of the things we were talking about in the build-up to this program was your particular article, which created a lot of interest on Travel Blather. Now that's Jeremy Head's sort of marketing blog, and you were writing a post there about basically the title was was it Travel Influencers Has the Bubble Burst? I think was the title. Just explain.
Yeah.
Just explain your thinking and what the post said, what the article said.
Well, the background to all of that, in fact, the specific the question, has the bubble burst, came from a discussion around a previous post from Phil Lees, one of the Australian, or previously working at one of the Australian DMOs, and his post was quite a detailed look at the successes or lack of successes that he personally has seen, and so other DMOs have seen, with hosted blog trips and influencer marketing in general. And on that discussion, somebody asked, can we finally say that the bubble has burst on influencer marketing or blogger marketing, or whatever you want to call it? And so that's the sort of question that I set out to answer with that post. And I mean, personally, I think that the bubble is far from burst. I don't think it is a bubble. I think that there's a lot. I'm not one of these people, of which there are many, that say that this whole thing is a waste of time and simply doesn't work. I think that there's a huge amount of potential to this work, and I think that we've really only started to tap into that potential. And my interest is really in figuring out, what else we can do, what we can do to continue to push out of the current mold and into new areas of work and new types of partnerships, and all of the things that we could be doing to make this the sort of nexus of travel bloggers or audience builders in general. It's not just travel bloggers. Obviously, there are all sorts of audience builders and people that are engaging audiences. The relationship between that very broad and active community of people and the industry itself, destination marketers, travel brands, and everyone else, people doing my sort of work. I think that there's a lot that can be done, and the post on Jeremy's site was kind of my overview, really, because there's only so much you can get into a couple of thousand words, but an overview of the things that we could be talking about.
Okay. I mean, the thing that struck me about it was that you were saying, from a different perspective, what a lot of the pro bloggers have been saying for some time, and that is that all too often it doesn't work because those campaigns aren't being followed through. And in fact, I think you kind of come to the same conclusion, because somewhere towards the end you say, I'm not blaming the bloggers, the influencers at all. The problem is with us marketeers, because we're not asking for the right things. But the broad spread of your piece is that all too often blogger campaigns, and you cite particularly the TBEX, which is actually a conference. It's a blogger conference, but in effect it's one of those biggest events when there's the biggest number of bloggers in one place. And you're saying that what you get out of it at the end of it is reports of gazillions of tweets and retweets and all that kind of social media activity. But how does that play out on the ground? And the stats that you mentioned there show that year on year it didn't. In other words, that particular TBEX in the Costa Brava was in 2012, and if you look at the figures between 2012 and 2013, there's practically no difference. It's stats and stats. I mean, to be honest, in 2013, the Daily Telegraph reported that Spain's had the biggest increase it's ever had, 7.1% across the board. And in the month of August alone, in 2013, the biggest area that got the most benefit was Catalonia. But of course, Catalonia, you can't compare like for like. Catalonia includes several other regions, including Costa Brava. But my point is that this is something that all the bloggers have been saying as well. That what we're doing is we're creating all this interest and putting it out there, but nobody's actually doing anything with it. And you talk about the marketing funnel and saying at the top of the marketing funnel comes the influencers, and they will draw people's attention to a region, a destination, an experience. But what we're not doing is we're not further down actually doing something with that. We're not taking that interest and energy and carrying it on. Is that
Yeah,
You,
precisely that.
sorry?
Precisely that. You've summarised it more succinctly than I probably could. But yeah, that's the exact issue in my mind. You know, marketing and specifically content marketing, there are two core challenges to this. You have to build an audience and engage an audience in some way. It doesn't matter how you do that. You know, you can run a blogger campaign or you can do anything else to build and engage an audience, and then you have to convert some proportion of that audience into a lead or a sale or a booking or a reservation or a visit if you're a destination. Whatever that conversion is, you have to make it. You have to achieve that with the audience. And you have to do all of that in a way that is measurable. So you've got a firm handle on your inputs, you've got a firm handle on your outputs, and you know what the returns are, you know what the balance is between the two. And I think the core of the point here is that what we are very good at doing within this current model is building and reaching and engaging that audience at the very top. What I think we need to do is figure out how we get better at converting that audience.
Michael Turtle, you and I have had this conversation, you know, regularly, because there's one of your big bugbears that you get hired, in effect, you know, you'll do a commission piece of work, part of a campaign, and then there's no kind of follow-up. There's no, you know, they don't do anything with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think before I sort of address that exactly, I think it's probably worth taking a step back and sort of thinking about what this word influencer means, because I think actually one of the big problems in this funnel, in the different stages of conversion, is that industry and probably even bloggers themselves don't really know what influencer really actually means. And by that, I think that there are lots of different types of influencers. You know, if you compare it to traditional media, there are the sort of celebrity endorsement kind of influencers. You know, if Nicole Kidman suddenly says that she flies Etihad, then that has an effect. People say, oh, well, I like Nicole Kidman, she flies Etihad, I'll fly Etihad. You know, if a prestigious magazine like...
No, they're not saying that. What they're saying is, Nicole Kidman flies Etihad, I want to meet Nicole Kidman, so I will fly with her as well.
I don't think they're going to be in the same class as Nicole Kidman, not Etihad. But yeah, no, there's another type of influencer, which is sort of the Condé Nast Traveler influence, which is that you read an article in a magazine about a destination, and you say, well, that destination sounds really interesting. Now that I've learned a bit more about it, maybe I'll go there at some point. And then there's the guidebook kind of influence, which is, you know, Lonely Planet. I don't think anyone decides to go to a destination because they've gone into a bookstore and seen a Lonely Planet guidebook for that destination. But once they've maybe made a decision to go to that destination, the guidebook has a lot of influence about exactly what you do there, where you stay, where you eat. And I think travel bloggers or digital influencers generally fit into those kind of categories as well. Some are much better at the sort of the personality style influence, which is if you see your favorite blogger in a destination having a great time, then somewhere in your mind you start to think, well, maybe I could go there too and have a great time. Some bloggers are more about showing what a destination has to offer, and so people say, well, yeah, now I've learned a bit more about it, I might be more interested in doing that. And others are probably more sort of detail oriented. You know, a traveler may have already decided to go somewhere, but a blogger influences exactly what they do or how long they stay or the style of travel. And you know, I think in terms of DMOs, but also brands working with bloggers and digital influencers, I think it's really critical to know how a blogger can influence the audience that they have, and also work with a destination's audience to tackle whichever of those sort of areas is what the key priority is.
I think that's
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer to not your question.
I think that's a really valid point, and I think it's all part of the same issue in my mind. I think that common sense tells us that there can only be a relatively small number of genuine consumer influencers who are travel bloggers, people that will post an article or a piece of content onto Facebook, and it will affect purchase decisions among real travel consumers. There can't be that many genuinely influential people along those lines. But the issue is that the sort of current model of blogger campaigns acts that is the case. So we're doing PR, basically. We're doing public relations. We're sending people out, and we're having them do a lot of top funnel, inspirational level stuff. And we're hoping that somehow that, in some way, drives bookings at some point. And we are kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that happens.
Well, you can see the kind of logic behind it. I mean, as you say, if there are only one or two, I mean, a handful of top-level influencers on whose word hangs so many purchasing decisions, it follows that what you could do if you can't get hold of them is get 50 not quite so influential people and reckon you get the same kind of impact out of it. I mean, that's the...
You could do that, certainly, but I mean, then we start going down, you know, the just sort of scattergun approach and chucking enough spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah. And it's all about quality, and that's where it begins to fall apart. I want to bring Melvin in here, because Melvin, I mean, I think one of the crucial things in this, and Michael touched on it, is that the travel industry, and by that I'm lumping everybody together. I'm thinking of DMOs and their agents, as it were, the travel PR companies and the like marketing companies, are probably missing a trick by actually not being specific enough about what it is they want to achieve, and being detailed enough in their arrangements with bloggers and influencers. And that's something that, for example, at iAmbassador, that I know that you guys are really keen on trying to establish, trying to nail down those details.
Well, I think just like what is important, what we already discussed right now, what we have to keep in mind that we are talking about travel. People don't buy travel on a weekly or daily basis like what they do for shopping or like food. So our process of inspiration is far, far longer. So we might have inspired someone now, but they will book in 2 or 3 years and got inspired by many people. So tracking something like that is, out of a blogger or marketing perspective, very tough. You could go maybe to Google and ask them who's using the Google Chrome browser, and they might have a very, very good long-term overview, but not even, I guess, over 1 or 2 years. That is one of the critical points about measuring, and I know that the measuring is always very important, but of course we as bloggers, we can only measure what's there, which is far better than in traditional media. But of course it's not all. We had a campaign and with a DMO, and we had an airline only as a flight sponsor, and we increased their bookings by over 20%. I have no idea what's really behind that measurement, because they tracked it and they came up with that number to us. So there are examples where
I think that was, I wouldn't want to expose too much, Melvin, but I think that was Royal Brunei, and I think what actually happened was that their marketing director stood up at World Travel Market, I think it was, and said, you know, we have tracked this back specifically, and we know that our bookings to Australia have increased by 20% as a direct result of this campaign.
Yeah, and I think what was even more important, he could say the exact number, not just like an even number like 20. He could point the dots out. And even there, how do you want to track this? And because it's like, well, there were, let's say, only a flight sponsor, and it was like, what happens in a year? I just had a discussion with Sarah Lee from Live Share Travel, and they were working with a partner for parking spaces at airports, and they created, I think, over 2,000 bookings. And in the same time, the Daily Mail created 5.
Mail.
I mean, and there's so much behind that what you still can't track, because it's just like not possible, because just like with an affiliate link.
Sorry, we should make it clear for anybody listening that what we're talking about is that on their site they basically they are now flavor of the month with this company, because they sold, as you say, I think it was 1,500, was it, or 2,000 booking deals, and as you say, the Daily Mail managed to sell in the same period 5, and we're talking about number 5, not 5,000, 5.
No, only 5
and that was
bookings.
that was That was the
And,
big difference. So we know that the in cases there is real ROI, but I'm conscious that Jeremy Head has just written a question in from the blogger's experience, Melvin and Michael. Do DMOs ever quote a specific metric for success for your work with them? Do they tell you what they're looking for specifically? And the answer, well, you tell me what the answer is.
Well, the thing is, with all the metrics, I think the trouble we have at this moment is that there are too many out there. So if you measure something and you go to the next platform and you will get different results. They should be very close to each other, otherwise something is totally wrong. But in the end, there's not like a standard formula out there. And when we got into the blogging and took it like more serious, like a couple of years ago, and I've asked the people, so how do you use to measure it? And the answer was, the best answer was, well, it's a feeling. Wow, the feeling is good, but of course, I mean, I was shocked to find out that there's not like one way. We've got the internet since the 90s, and there's no way to measure it. And I think, well, there are so many marketing people out there, but they I don't know what they missed out on something like that.
I think
there should be more like standards for that, which people should be able to use and understand for everyone.
I think that
Matthew, sorry, you were going to.
Yes, yeah. I think to a certain extent that's true. There are all sorts of different ways and tools and platforms for measuring audience reach. So trying to quantify our impressions and the numbers of people that saw this activity and all of that kind of stuff. In terms of tracking and measuring the real outcomes on conversions, whatever the conversion is, that is eminently trackable. That you can do that out of the box with a standard analytics package like Google Analytics, and marketers, particularly brand marketers who are promoting a transactional product. You know, you want a booking in your hotel, or you want a booking in with your travel company. They absolutely should be measuring the outcomes from a campaign like that down to bookings, and it is eminently measurable. Even if the conversion isn't sent directly from, for example, an iAmbassador campaign. If an iAmbassador campaign sends traffic to a client website, and that traffic doesn't convert on that first visit, maybe the traffic comes back 3 or 4 times, maybe they subscribe to an email, and then they come back a year later after a click on that email. All of these things are eminently measurable, and they're all ways that we can tie real ROI value to campaigns like this. And that's kind of my point. You know, there are things that we can do, and it's actually very straightforward, that would help us assign a lot of genuine monetary value to all of this work. And I think that would be excellent for everyone.
I think
Melvin, is that not?
Well, I think
what you're doing
is like very important, like what you just said. I think it's very much focused on the brands. Like with our campaigns, of course, we also work with brands, but it's also very much about the destination with the DMO. And I think that is, well, might be tougher to track, because maybe they book it on Expedia or on Booking.com or I don't know where. And they still got inspired not just by one blogger, but like a couple of bloggers. And maybe just like the last guy, whoever that is, might not even be a blogger, might make some money with an affiliate links, but the others were part of the deal as well. And Booking will never change their stats with Expedia. And maybe, well, I mean, you know what I mean? It's in the end, it's always about the destination. The bloggers, so far, they were pretty much left out of this kind of business. And you see now a change of professional travel blogging, and where it's not just like about PR, but also about the marketing point of view, which is very interesting. And I think we are just at the beginning there.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. It's very, very difficult to actually nail things down in that detailed way, as Melvin says, because all too often the way that you track campaigns is through exactly the same way as affiliates, for example. It's the last what's the phrase they use? Last touch or last contact. last touch, and that's and of course, as Melvin says, I mean, you don't know who that last touch is. It may be through by a completely different source of influence to the ones that were being organised in the campaign. So very hard to get to. But that, in a sense, is what we were talking about right from the start, and what you were talking about in your piece, Matthew, because what you're talking about is that funnel. At the top there, we've got the first bit of influence, and then as it narrows down towards the point of purchase, that bit, tracking people through from that first influence down, that's the in a sense the marketer's role and client's role. So what needs to happen at the top end is that we need to agree between the client, between the destination and the influencers, exactly what it is that they're trying to reach, so that they can at least make some of that that linkage down through the funnel. And that's I mean, Melvin, because you've got iAmbassador have actually got a deal with those that statistics company. I forget what it's called now.
Brent, yeah.
Yeah. And because they're doing quite sophisticated measurement, aren't they?
Well, what I like about that, because what they do is they measure it as best as they can. Of course, there's also limits. For example, with Facebook, if you put something in a Facebook gallery, like the most awesome photos, the API doesn't allow to track it for some reason. Maybe they changed it, but that was like last year. But so whatever they can track, they use that, and they compare this the size of and the reach to what people would have spent for online advertising on those platforms, like on Twitter, Facebook, and banner ads. And so they can say, okay, here were like these kind of top influencers, and they reached 1 million people, and to reach a similar kind of audience with that many retweets and blah, 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 all what's behind that, you would have spent so much. And I think that is starting or having something like that changed completely everything so far already, because people, what is the reach? A reach is useful. It's good to know that you reach the people, but what is really the value behind that? So that's stuff what I'm still missing at many measure tools. If a tweet reach or whatever you use, or brand watch, they can tell you how many people you reach, but they can't give you the value.
Well, in theory, I mean, the problem is that, as we know, with Twitter, you're basically reaching between 7 and 12% of your followers, and you're only doing that in the first hour of the tweet anyway. So it's a small figure. Whereas Pinterest has a huge kind of muscle to it. We know that 98% of pinners, as they're called, have actually bought stuff specifically on the strength of a pin that they've seen. So it's very difficult to kind of marry those things up. You mentioned AVEs there. Now that's something I know Matthew mentioned as well. And you both come at it from exactly the same direction, I think, because everybody recognizes AVEs is advertising value equivalent, for those who haven't heard it before. And basically, it's an old formula that years and years and years ago marketers used to use to try and get some idea of return on investment. So they would say, okay, what's the equivalent? If we have an advert that we're putting into this newspaper, what would that equivalent amount of space, X number of column inches, cost us in advertising? And that's the way it works. And it was widely discredited years ago, and still is by everybody, including Melvin, who's been kind of reinvented it for the industry because there's nothing else. And you mentioned it as well, Matthew, on your post.
Yeah. I think it's I think it's certainly a useful thing to know. I'm not saying that any of these numbers are useless. They're all good to know. I just think that that shouldn't be where we stop. I think that's a metric of value that might help us assign some value to a PR campaign, and if that's what we're trying to do, then great, and that's fine. I think that trying to apply an old analog concept that, as you say, didn't carry much water at the time to an era where, I mean, the advertising landscape online these days is fragmented and fractured beyond comparison. There is no consistency even to a platform. You know, a Facebook platform or a Google ad platform. People are adjusting their bids and their creatives in every aspect of their campaigns on a continual basis, often automated. there is no AVE. That you couldn't compare one ad to another ad, let alone the outcomes of a blog or influencer campaign. They're simply not comparable, I don't think. Particularly when it comes down to making real marketing strategic decisions over, you know, where to assign a budget, what we're tracking, and how we're quantifying success. Things like AV just don't really help with that.
But Melvin, that's really your position as well, to an extent. I mean, what you're saying is there isn't any, you know, in the absence of anything else, this is at least some kind of gauge, isn't it?
Well, what I see is like something else. For example, the TV. In the past, it was black and white. I mean, that sucked, but at this time, it was like amazing. But only because it sucks now, you don't throw your TV away because you improved it. Not you, but I mean, the thing is, with the AV, it's, well, all the kind of things, it's not like the top ultra end thing, but what is important, that there's some stuff behind that which makes sense, and you need to improve it to the new digital media. Only because for print media it sucks because you didn't know how many people read it, doesn't mean stop it, finish it, bring it to the next level, bring it in with some color. And that is also where I still see like a lot of process to do for the future, where you really find all the levels all together and the different platforms and interact with each other and to, yeah, on a long-term basis. And whatever you create, it will never be perfect because the market will always be a step ahead, especially online.
Yeah, my only concern is that, or one of my concerns is that we get sidetracked with this stuff. We're casting around for measures or quantifiers or signifiers of ROI on one level, when actually, as I said in the post, you know, there are many things that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to invent new approaches and new theories of marketing. There are many things that we can do that are incredibly easy and would add a lot more value and dispel a lot of the myths that people have and complaints that people have about the value of blogger and influencer marketing. You know, there are many things that we could do very easily, and it would, as I keep saying, it would benefit everyone, including you guys. You know, including the bloggers and the people doing that, because it would theoretically bring a lot more value to everyone. The pie gets bigger for everyone.
But this comes down to that first arrangement that pro bloggers have with clients. It's the importance of nailing down exactly what the key performance indicators are going to be. In other words, saying we want to achieve an increase of 5% year on year or month on month or whatever the period is going to be on visitors to the tourism website. Now, to be honest, that's going to be hard to achieve because, as I think Abby pointed out in the comments under your blog, that we know that people don't necessarily click through from blogs onto tourist sites. They click through from blogs onto the specific items, you know, the hotels and the tours and stuff like that. But that's the point. These things have to be nailed down. And if I'm not mistaken, Melvin, oh, by the way, Jeremy says they use a tool. This is at what's Jeremy's company? iMedia.
iCrossing.
iCrossing, that's the one. I'm guessing he's talking about iCrossing. He says we use a tool called Brand Watch, which sounds similar to Melvin's one. Well, it certainly sounds similar because yours is Brand's Eye. But what I was wondering about, Melvin, is to what extent you can, if you're doing an iAmbassador campaign, to what extent you can say to Brand's Eye, listen, these are the things that we're trying to achieve. These are the KPIs. These are the what we, you know, the number of new people visiting the website, or the number of whatever it might be. To what extent can you get Brand's Eye to kind of monitor all of that kind of stuff?
Well, Brand's Eye is very much focused on social media. They don't give anything about any analytics about blogs. And I think that is still like the trouble. So what we normally use is not just like the one, but we try to get all together, which is like so much work behind that. Just like for the final report. So we have the overview with Brand's Eye. We use tweet reach just for Twitter again. But because we know that it's like limited also with Facebook API, so we ask the bloggers to give their feedback, but we don't have access to their Facebook pages, so we need to rely on what we get back. And from there, we just like try to give the best overview we are able to we can give. But of course, from our point of view, running as a blogger network is of course still like limited. Similar like with what you just said with Brandwatch. I mean, this is something I've looked myself also into, which is like a very powerful tool, but what I still haven't figured out, and they told me, I hope they changed it by now, that you can't see the overall reach. And I mean, I can't believe it that they don't provide this number, but that's like such an important number. And I don't know what they charge per month, but and if it's like 100, 150, but they can't show the overall reach. I mean, wow.
I think we're coming back round to the root problem. It's the same problem that's running through all of this. And I think that we can simplify this whole thing rather than making it any more complicated. The metrics for a campaign like this might include the number of people we can put onto a destination or a brand's email list. That could be our KPI. Yeah. The number of people that we can put onto a remarketing list, a remarketing audience list, that could be the KPI. Those are the touch
and would give you the follow-through.
Exactly. They are the touch points that we need as marketers to then go on and convert those prospects into sales and into revenue. And it could be that simple. You know, one particular campaign can be measured purely and simply in terms of the number of email subscriptions it generated, or the number of, as Abby said in the discussion, the number of people that visit a landing page or a microsite or whatever and get added to a retargeting list. And then we can go on and we can nurture those people in the long term until they gradually progress and become a sale. That's standard, that's simple stuff to do. We don't need to throw lots of money at very expensive social monitoring software. We can make things a lot simpler if we wanted to.
And if you look at the
Michael,
I was just about to jump in. Do you have a specific question, Alistair?
Well, I was going to ask you if when you're working with brands, and not necessarily on an iAmbassador campaign, are you finding you have to kind of hold them by the hand and suggest things like this to them?
A lot of brands probably even aren't at the level where they sort of understand that, you know, retweeting and sharing things that I'm producing on their own channels is a good thing to do. But what I was going to say is actually some examples, not of brands that I've worked with specifically, but I've seen, because we're talking here about DMOs a lot, and I think what Matthew was saying was completely correct, that DMOs actually need to think more like brands and look at what brands do with internet and content marketing and apply that themselves. And you know, I saw a great example. I'm not going to say who it was because I can't remember, but it was a tour company that worked with bloggers on a campaign. But you know, and this has happened with lots of examples. But you know, and they offered these bloggers a 15% off deal that they could give to their readers. And so there was a bit of a very easy call to action. You know, a follower or a reader would see the bloggers saying what a great time they were having, showing what this tour company could offer, and then say, and right now, if you're interested in booking, click through this link and you get a 15% off. And I've never seen a DMO do a campaign with a blogger and say, and click through here and we will tell you all the latest sales that hotels in our destination are having, or click through here and because there's an airline that has a great sale to our destination at the moment. You know, there isn't that sort of incentive, that call to action, that obvious thing that someone can do after they are inspired. And yeah, Matthew's right, collecting emails is a great thing to do. because then they can send out links to everything that a blogger writes about for the next 12 months and get constant reminders. But also actionable things, I think, would be really important. And it's not a blogger's job to do this, I think. I actually don't think that even groups like iAmbassador, which have a level of marketing in what they do, should necessarily be developing ideas on this scale, because blogging and digital influencers should only be a part of that. But bloggers and digital influencers can definitely be involved with DMOs who are doing as a very clever, actionable campaign like that, because we have access to the audience that they want, and we are able to promote whatever sort of deals or timely events that are happening to our audience. And that's where you can use influence further down the funnel, which is what sort of Matthew's whole post was about.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. That's the crucial bit. And in fact, Matthew, I think you say, when the lunacy is that we're basically getting bloggers to sort of work like marketeers when they don't need to. They just need to do what they're good at, which is creating content and being creative and storytelling and all those sorts of things. And we should be then taking, exactly as you described, it's a great example, the email example. We should then be constructing that offer, that call to action, and then following through down the funnel, tracking those emails and carrying on an engagement with them. And that's a really important thing. I just want to just read into the conversation a couple of things. Dylan Lowe was saying that G Adventures have a very good, he actually says, interestingly, is the G Adventures Wanderers in Residence model a kind of meet halfway? He wrote that a little while back when we were talking about something slightly different, but it's a very good program, I think, to recognize. Michael, you're a G Adventures Wanderer in Residence, aren't you?
No. I've done some stuff. I've done some stuff. Well, yeah, thanks. You want to tell them that?
Either way, Craig Zabransky says, is reaching an audience via social media any different than TV commercial reach? Well, I can tell you this. I mean, one of the things that we've touched on is that it is incredibly hard still, even now in this day and age. One of the points that Melvin often makes is that after all these years, here we are, we've got computers, we can measure absolutely everything. It's the world of big data. And yet, actually joining up those dots is incredibly hard. So, yeah, I think in some ways, it kind of is, it ought to be very different. It ought to be much more trackable, much more definable than TV commercial reach. I speak as somebody who used to work in the radio industry, and I remember, being conscious that there I was talking supposedly to an audience of X 100,000, knowing that the way that they judged that, the way that they actually assessed that, was through a system called Radar, which basically what they did is they took a random sample of the population, minuscule, few hundred people, families, and gave them diaries and had them write down what it was they were listening to. And that went on for years and years and years. And I think I'm not sure if it's been updated since, but I mean, I remember sitting there thinking, dear God, one of these days, soon, now that we've got computers and so on, I'll be able to sit at my desk here during my program and watch a needle, just like the peak meters on the desk anyway, telling me that the audience is climbing up. And if I say something, crass, it dip down again. But I'll be able to do it in real time. We can't. So the answer is no, I don't think social media is any different than TV commercial advertising, in the sense that it's just as difficult to track what the results are. And I hope that kind of answers your question. A couple more. Jeremy Head. He says, Gary Arndt added some really useful comments to that blog post that Alistair referenced. Well worth a read if you have 15 minutes. I'll put the link on the notes, the show notes for this edition, so you can. And he also says we typically seek email sign-ups for Visit Wales, traffic as a secondary metric, but we put paid media into the mix along with blogger work. Yeah, absolutely. I think what's been really interesting in this, and we're coming up to the top of the hour now, is that there's clearly a kind of a gap between what it is that we know that we can all do, what marketers can do, what commercial bloggers can do, influencers can do, and it's somehow just not quite happening. And I'm going to come back to Roni and Ethan, Roni in particular, and say, Roni, isn't that sort of 9/10 of what it is that you're going to be doing with the New York Travel Festival, is trying to sort of bridge that education gap?
Well, the whole point of the influencer session that we're having with Brett Love, Lee Abamonte, and is that Deirdre, Ethan? Deirdre Campbell? Ethan helped with this one. Or is that...
Sorry, Deirdre Campbell. Deirdre Campbell.
Yeah, Deirdre Campbell. So the idea for that workshop is for it to be on Lee Abamonte, who has worked, he's working with Johnny Jett on that insurance campaign now, so he's sort of the celebrity face of that. Deirdre, who Ethan can tell you a little bit more about if we have any time on that, and Brett Love, who I think the community knows to some extent, and Alistair, you could probably give a little more background on that. But the point being, we want to have destinations, PRs, other folks like that come into the room and ask questions and hear about these sort of case studies and have that back and forth. Right now, we've had kind of one aspect of this conversation. The idea for this workshop for me is really to put it upon those three voices to say, how do you figure that out? How do you know if it's somebody who has this massive sort of Facebook and Twitter reach and goes on Fox News and things like that? Is it worth putting all of your eggs into that basket? It's the thing you brought up before, Alistair, or I think it was Alistair, of the one celebrity versus the 50 sort of smaller folks. Like, how do you balance that? And when you're a smaller brand who in no way could afford what needs to happen with that, then what do you do? And is it even worth then working with the kind of smaller tier? And where's the difference between small, middle, and large? So for that session, that back and forth is really what we're looking for, and it's on those three moderators to make the case.
Okay. Craig Zabransky says, exactly, I feel we beat up bloggers too much for this, measuring when TV doesn't do any better. And he says, by the way, thanks, it's a good hangout, and thanks to the NYTF, the New York Travel Festival. Yeah, that's it. So
just quickly, Craig is going to be moderating a Google Hangout on Monday about photography.
Craig has a vested interest.
Yes and no. Craig is also watching this because it's going to be his first foray into moderating a Google Hangout, so he wants to learn from the best.
Excellent. Okay, what have we learned here? We need to be better at following on from creating from storytelling and being influencers and creating an interest, a brand awareness and interest in destinations or travel products into actually carrying it through so the marketers can do something with it. And I'm sure that's something that will be extrapolated at the New York Travel Festival. We're past the hour, and my feeling is that beyond an hour, frankly, people lose the will to live. So call it a day here. And thank you all very much. Wish you the best of luck with the New York Travel Festival. And thank you for showing up. Thank you, Michael Turtle, for showing up and managing to stay awake. I half expected you kind of slump in front of the screen. Thank you, Melvin, as well. And thank you, Matt, for talking, well, for leading us into the discussion, basically. Okay, that's it from us. Next week, be back at the same time. I'm not sure what I'm doing next week, but I have a feeling it may be about wildlife tours as a specific niche area. But I'll tell you more about that on the blog in the next few days. Okay, for now, bye for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.